Why your mother thinks you super moody when you're actually just upset. Now, this is a story of my life, as is almost everything that I talk about in all these episodes. But I grew up being a very moody child, especially in my teenage years. I was very super moody, and I take full responsibility for that and full accountability, but with the justification that I didn't grow up in an emotionally healthy family. I wasn't raised, I was raised by a single mother. I wasn't raised by a mother who knew how to confront or address emotional stuff or uncomfortable stuff. And so I quickly picked that up, that we don't talk about things in this family. And my way of coping with that was being extremely moody. And especially since I'm very introverted and very reserved, and that is no excuse whatsoever. I think for me, I don't want to use being an introvert, being someone who's reserved, being someone who's calm, cool, and collected. I never want to use that as an excuse for me to not communicate my feelings. I never want to use that as an excuse to not be there for others or not allow others to be there for me. But in this case, I'm explaining it from the point that the reason that I was more moody when I was a child is that, first of all, I was already an introvert, I was already reserved. So these things did not come naturally to me, as opposed to now as a young adult where I am still an introvert, I am still reserved, but now I am teaching myself to be able to communicate with people. I don't have to be a socialite in order to communicate with people. I don't have to be super out there or put myself extremely out there or try to be extroverted in order to communicate with people or open up myself to a certain extent, open up myself to people or be there for people, excuse me, or even allow people to be there for me. Now that I'm a young adult, I now understand the difference. But when I was a child, what I needed was a mother. What I needed was a parent who was going to be able to teach me these things. Unfortunately, because of my mother's own childhood experiences, she also didn't know the ways to go about these. And I always say in my episodes, I don't I don't like that to be a justification for lacking in certain areas as a mother, but I can sympathize with the fact that my mother didn't have somebody who talked to her when she was going through something. She didn't have someone to share feelings with, and perhaps those people who were there with her or for her, they didn't respond well when maybe she tried to express herself, when maybe she tried to share her feelings. Maybe they were not there for her in the way that she needed. But still, for me, it's a matter of making a choice. I sympathize with my mother's childhood, and I sympathize with the fact that she didn't know how to be there for us, especially emotionally, because she never got it on her own, um in her own childhood from her own family. I sympathize with that, but I'm still putting the full responsibility on her that she should have made a different choice. I think we all have that choice when you are raised a certain way and you grow up and you realize that the way that I was raised or the way that my family and I were treated or we treated each other, it was not normal, it was not fine, it was not healthy. We have the responsibility to make a different choice and say, that is not how I want to treat my children. That's not how I want my children to behave or treat one another. So I'm gonna implement a new way of living. And so for me, I do blame my mother in as much as I sympathize with her for not having a healthy childhood in a way, or for facing certain things in her own childhood that might have hurt her and wounded her or even traumatized her to such an extent that she was never able to give that to us. But I do blame her on the part of just make a different choice. We always hear stories of people who grew up in physically abusive homes, and maybe you hear a young man saying, my father used to beat my mother, but I don't want to do that. I want to be different. I think when you get to a certain age in your adulthood, you know what happened in your childhood is not normal, it wasn't fine, and you have the responsibility to make that choice. Now, granted, once you make that choice, it doesn't make it easier, because now it means you have to learn how to love, how to be there for other people, because these are the things that you didn't receive from home, so they're not going to come natural. They're going to require work. They're going to require learning. They're going to require asking sometimes. They're going to require doing research sometimes in order to learn how to love other people, how to be affectionate, how to be loving, how to be there, how to be understanding. And my mother didn't make that choice. Until this point, she hasn't made that choice, and I'm still finding it hard to forgive her. I want to get to a point where I forgive her, but I'm finding it hard to forgive her, because for me it's still it's ringing so much in my head that I just wish she had made a different choice. I wish she had told herself that, you know what, the pain that I experienced in my childhood, or the way that I felt, or how neglected I felt, or how unloved I felt, how unsupported, how unseen, I don't want my children to feel that. I really wish my mother had made that choice to say, I'm actually going to be different for my children, and I'm going to teach them as siblings to be there for one another. But instead, she actually made us compete with one another as siblings, and also made us compete for her love, because she didn't fully love us. It was almost like whenever my mother loved us, or you felt maybe you were getting some type of attention from her, it was like a teaser. Like, I'll just give you a little bit so that, you can cope. But at the same time, I will leave you wanting more. And this is just how I'm now processing it. Obviously, I've never heard my mother utter these words out and say, oh, I didn't want to love you fully. And I doubt she would ever say that, because she's not one to admit when she has done something wrong, whether she was aware or not aware. She's just not someone to admit when she has lacked or failed or didn't do well at something. And I don't know why she even thinks that's a shame, because sometimes we fail at things. We fail sometimes to be a good friend to somebody. Sometimes we fail at a romantic relationship. And I think we often run away from that word, because I don't know, maybe we just want to be positive. But I think it overlaps to more of toxic positivity, where we don't want to admit sometimes you did fail. Like that word uses, sometimes you just failed to be a good mother, and maybe not in all areas. Like I always say, my mother did everything to provide for us. She didn't fail in that area. As a matter of fact, she exceeded, because she made sure that whatever we needed physically for sustenance, she actually provided. And it's okay to be able to admit where in certain areas we might have failed. Maybe as a friend, in one aspect, I failed to be there for my friend in a certain way, or I failed to stand up. I don't think it is such a bad word as we make it out to be. It's actually a word that helps us to take accountability for the things that we have done wrong, and helps us to reevaluate and reassess ourselves, and think how we can do better. There was someone who actually said that shame is not a bad thing. I think sometimes that's another thing we really avoid. We avoid feeling like, this is not to say you should constantly be judging yourself and feeling like a failure. That's a different story. But to admit in one area where you did fail at, and especially just like in relationships, because this is what all my episodes are about. Like relationship dynamics, when you fail in one area and you feel shame, that is okay, because shame actually makes you want to be better. As long as it's not a consistent feeling that that follows you or drags you along for your entire life, because then that's a different story. But shame actually makes you want to be different. If you feel that shame, that, oh, I feel bad for doing that, it means next time you won't want to do that, because you won't want to feel that feeling of shame. And my mother doesn't want to feel shame and doesn't want to admit where she has failed as a mother or even as a human being, because for whatever reason or whatever happened in her past or in her childhood, she was also conditioned to feel bad for failing at something. You know what I mean? Like, you are almost like persecuted for failing at something. And that's not the whole point of admitting that I failed at something. It's not so that you can be persecuted or, be bashed for your mistakes or failures, but it's so that you can reflect and look at yourself and say, yeah, I could have done better. I mean, isn't it, wouldn't it be crazy if I failed a subject at school and I wanted to put it in a different way so that I don't sound like a failure? But the truth of the matter is, if I fail an entire grade or I fail a certain subject, that's just what it is. I failed. And if I acknowledge that and I come to a loving family, that's like, okay, yeah, you failed this subject, but you know what? If you pull your socks up, if you do one, two, three, you are smart enough, you can do it again and you will pass the next time. Instead of coming to a family that's going to be like, oh, yeah, obviously you failed because you're stupid, because you're lazy. So admittance, the admission of failure doesn't mean that you now deserve to be persecuted or bashed for that. But the admission of failure actually helps you to do better so that you can fully acknowledge that you actually did fail in this particular area. And my mother just hates admitting anything she has failed, because I guess for her, she feels too much shame, that she can't handle feeling that way. And so, because of that, having a mother who is emotionally immature, emotionally unavailable, emotionally distant, emotionally disconnected, it made me also quickly learn, because as a child, we really just process things the way that we see that our parents or in our family, how things are processed. And so seeing my mother, even though I was a child and couldn't have really said all these things that, oh, my mother is emotionally like this, I wasn't able to put that much logic into it. But because I saw the way she processed things, I also learned to process things in a way that suppressed my feelings. So I was a super moody child. I was a very, very moody. But this was always because I would be upset at something or I would be angry at something, and I felt like I couldn't express myself. And so that would result in me being moody. It wasn't the right way to handle my feelings, but I was a child. I didn't know any other better way. And whenever I would try to express, maybe I was upset about something or I was angry about something, I would be shut down by statements like, oh, just move on, or don't hold grudges, or learn to forgive, or don't be that upset about this, or maybe it wasn't a big deal, or maybe you're too sensitive or too emotional. And in as much as my family, my mother might have thought that, oh, I mean well by saying this. Like, listen to me, I'm at a point where I don't care what you meant, okay? Because if you mean well and I tell you that, okay, it doesn't sit right with me, respond accordingly, okay? Like, for me, it's one thing that my mother thinks that when she would say these things, as in to say just like, oh, don't hold grudges, or just forgive, or just move on, instead of us really addressing the matter at hand, or talking about what I'm upset about or angry about and really just getting to the core of it, or having my mother's emotional support, she really thought she was helping me by just telling me to essentially just get over it, even though she wouldn't say, oh, just get over it. But the statements or the things that she would say, they were actually just saying that. It was just another way of saying, just get over it and move on with it. Again, this goes back to how my mother, in her own life experiences, in her own life journey, this is how I suppose she learned to deal with emotions. Maybe other people in her life, when she was upset or frustrated or just had feelings that she wanted to express, maybe that's how they also responded to her. As in, like, just saying things that basically said, just get over it, just move on, don't be too sensitive, don't be too emotional. And so she also learned that behavior and passing it on to her children, as to just like say that I'm not going to deal with this. So just like, don't hold grudges, just forgive, especially as a Christian family. Those would be like the big things that you hear, like, oh, don't hold a grudge. Like, you were just instantly supposed to just be fine. And so, because all these feelings were suppressed in me, I couldn't really talk about it. And even if I tried to talk about it, I would be shut down by these statements. I ended up being a very moody person. I was very, extremely moody. But God being good, going to varsity actually changed me. I think living with other people and just being in a different place and not being at home, I think it just gave me a different perspective. And I wasn't even aware of the change that was happening in me. It was even my family themselves who pointed it out when I would come back for holidays. I would come back home. They actually started noticing that I'm not as moody as I used to be. And I think just the distance and the space that I got from my family by just being away from them, I think something in my mind shifted. And being with different people, something in my mind started to shift. But now that I'm in this place, because back then, when I was super moody, it was a way of processing my feelings. It was almost a defense mechanism where I felt like if I just remain moody, if I sulk, if I just don't want to talk to anybody, then nobody's going to shut me down in terms of how I feel. Nobody's going to invalidate my feelings because I'm not going to tell you what I'm feeling. I'm just going to be moody. I'm just going to be sulky. I'm just going to keep quiet. I'm just going to walk around just sulking. And then in that way, it was a coping mechanism in the sense that if I don't share my feelings, you're not going to shut them down. But I was still suppressing my feelings nonetheless. It wasn't a healthy way to deal with my feelings, but it was a way that I found to cope with all of my emotions. And so now that I'm in this place where back then I wasn't conscious, I wasn't fully aware of what was really happening, but now I'm aware and I'm intentionally, emotionally distancing myself from my family without me being moody or sulky or walking around with a big mouth or not wanting anybody to talk to me, because now I'm mature. I am maturing. I think that is the best way to put it. I am continuously maturing and learning to be better. Now that I'm doing it more intentionally. And because it is intentional, I'm not sulking. I'm not giving my family the silent treatment, which is actually one of their tactics for emotional abuse. And I think also my being moody as a kid, as a teenager, was also my way of like kind of punishing my family, even though that wasn't like the reasoning at the time, because again, I was just young. I didn't have that much logic. But I think it was also just a way to say, since I'm not allowed in this environment, in this home, to express my feelings, I'm just not going to talk to you. Again, defense mechanism, coping mechanism. it was also just a way perhaps to punish my family for them not wanting to listen to me, especially my mother, who was supposed to lead us into understanding one another, being able to express our feelings. And so now I am doing it in a more mature way. So I'm no longer moody, but I think in my family's eyes, they see it as being moody. Okay. I am no longer moody, but I am intentionally, emotionally distancing myself from them because I have craved and wanted their attention and validation and affection so much that I'm just tired. I'm sick and tired of wanting that from them because clearly it seems like they will just never be able to give that to me. And so now I'm just emotionally distancing myself also because in as much as I was craving their validation, attention, and compassion, and love and support, not only did I not get those valuable things that you're supposed to get from your family, I was also being emotionally abused by means of manipulation, gaslighting me, confusing me emotionally, belittling me, making me feel small, taking jabs at my self-esteem. All of those things are emotional abuse. And so I'm emotionally distancing myself for those two reasons, that clearly I'm never going to get the qualities that a family should be able to give one another. But also on top of that, not only am I not getting what I'm trying to give you, because it's not just that I'm here demanding that my family should be loving and understanding towards me. They should support me, see me, value me. These are the things that I've put in intentional effort to do to them. So much so that I actually became a family pleaser. Like, that's just another level where, because I know I've been a people pleaser, but it was deeply rooted on the fact that I was actually a family pleaser. I was a mother pleaser. I sucked up to my mother. I tried to please her so much so that in hopes that I could get that affection. I think for me, I was such a good girl and tried to do everything right for my mother and for my family, for my sister, because I thought then they would love me. Then they would see me, like truly see me. Then they would value me. Then they would validate me. I would validate them so much in their pursuits or endeavors or whatever they were doing. I would try to validate them so much because I think in my mind, in my naive mind, I thought that, okay, if I give this to you, then you will give it back to me. They always say kill them with kindness, and I say kindness will kill you. Honestly, in certain cases, you will die trying to kill other people with kindness. And for me, that's just no longer a battle I'm willing to fight with my family anymore. I have tried to kill my family with kindness in the hopes that they would return. Like, it's not even much to ask. Like I would give so much of myself to them, thinking that they would also give themselves to me, but they never did that. And not only did they not give themselves to me, they emotionally and psychologically abused me. And now I'm at a point where I'm emotionally distancing myself. And so to them, it looks like I'm moody because I'm no longer trying or overcompensating in terms of pleasing them or just being there for them. Honestly, I'm not even there for them anymore. Like, I don't even care. I'm not even going out of my way to be there for them, to validate them, to support them, because I have done these things for so long and they never did it for me. And it's a two-way street. It is, because this belief, and I don't know, maybe it's rooted in Christianity, that you just give of yourself and you never expect anything in return. Because some of the things that are in the Bible that are God's will, okay? They are definitely God's will. We have misunderstood them. We really, really have. Sometimes when you go back to a verse that you always thought you understood, and when you really look at it and you're like, but God was not saying this, you know? And I never want to be the one person who like contradicts or goes against the word of God, or maybe uses the word of God in order to agree with my point. No. Like, I respect the Bible. I try my best to live by God's will. And I don't even want to have a debate as to like, oh God, maybe you didn't mean this. Like, God is God, okay? But my point is understanding the word of God truly the way that he meant it, you know? Like, God, let me know when you want me to be a doormat. Okay, because I think that's like the mentality with like Christians. Like, sometimes you feel like, okay, I should just be a doormat because God says, just love people, don't expect anything in return, give, do that. For me right now, it's more about understanding where God wants me. If God, at a certain situation, and this doesn't sound nice, I know, but if at a certain point God wants me to be a doormat, then let it be, if it is God's will. But if he doesn't want me to be there, to be someone's doormat, and it's crazy, I am hearing it that, okay, wait, are you saying that God sometimes wants us to be doormats, to be pushovers? I'm not necessarily saying that. But I'm saying, if at a certain season that is the will of God for me, so that he may have the glory at the end of it, so that I may have a testimony at the end of it that's going to glorify his name, then so be it. I am not fighting against God's will. What I am fighting is people who think that they can walk all over you because you are a Christian. That's where I have a problem, because you're just so good, you're just so nice, you're just so kind. Then people start taking advantage of you. The only person who gets a say on whether or not you should be a pushover or a doormat at a certain point in your life, not your entire life, by the way, it is God. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If God wants me to be a doormat, I will be, because he's God, the creator of heavens and earth. So be it. So be it if it is God's will. But if it is people just choosing to just take advantage of me because I'm also just I'm also just trying to be good, in the name of Christianity, then that's my own thing. And that is just people taking advantage of me, and me allowing them to take advantage of me. I don't know if I'm getting my point across, but I have this understanding in my mind where I'm just like, God, if it's your will, let it be. And clearly for me, it is not God's will, maybe not anymore, because in as much as it sucked to grow up in this emotionally unhealthy and toxic and emotionally abusive environment, but at the same time, God has shaped something in me that can never be taken away from me. There's a certain strength that has come from me facing what I've faced, having the type of family that I have, a family of narcissists, a family who can't emotionally connect with me. There's a type of strength that has come from that. But at the same time, God has had his mercy on me, and he has required an end to it, and I'm here for it. I'm like, Lord, this has happened too much for so long, and I felt so empty, so void, so alone. And now God was like, time's up. Time's up. This is why I'm saying, if it is God's will, if it is God's will for a certain season for me to be a doormat, because I think I was a doormat for my family for a very long time, and they took advantage of me trying to please them, because I was doing it in the hopes that I would get love, I would get attention and affection from them. And I was blinded to how abusive they were, because that's the thing with emotional and psychological abuse. It is very subtle. It happens in little in little ways that build up over time, that it can take years to notice. And I thank God that he said, you know what, it's over now. Because I got to a point where I was feeling emotionally drained and exhausted, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why I kept feeling so empty, so worthless, why I kept giving so much of my family and never getting anything from them. And God put a stop to it. So for me, it's all about God's will. Okay, I don't want to be anyone's doormat. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here for it. I'm not here to be like a pushover and let people take advantage of me. I don't want that. I don't wish that upon my life. Just like Jesus didn't actually want to be persecuted, to be crucified. Remember when he prayed that prayer and said, "Lord, let this cup pass from me"? He didn't like that idea. I mean, I can imagine being in his position. I also wouldn't like the idea of being crucified, just like I don't like the idea of being a doormat to somebody. I don't like the idea of somebody taking advantage of me. But God, if it is your will, let it be so. Let it be so. That's where I'm at right now. If it's God's will, let it be done. So my family right now is currently reviewing my state of being and where I am with me intentionally, emotionally distancing myself without being moody, without sulking, without giving them the silent treatment, but because they are noticing the change. I think that's just it. They are noticing the change, but at the same time, they can't really pinpoint it. They're noticing the change that I'm no longer trying to please them. I'm no longer trying to overcompensate by being there for them, being their emotional supply, being everything that they need and them being nothing to me. Again, it goes back to what I was trying to say. Has to be mutual. Don't think you're being a good person by you being everything to everybody and nobody being anything to you. You're not being a good person. You're actually just being taken advantage of. They're just taking you for a ride. And they know they can do that because they're actually counting on the fact that you want to keep up this reputation of being a good person by continuing to be there for them. They are hoping that you will actually keep it up, that you just try to maintain this, "Oh, I'm a nice person, I'm a good person, I'm a kind person" reputation, so that they can keep taking advantage of you and never being there for you. Relationships, they are mutual respect, mutual support. It's a give and take. Yes, it is a give and take. I give, I take, you take. Okay? There's no one who keeps taking and never giving. And there's not one person who keeps giving and never getting anything. That's not how relationship works. That's not even being a good person. I was lying to myself for such a long time thinking I'm being a good person by not wanting or expecting my family to be there for me, even though deep down in my heart, I really wanted them to be there for me. But I thought if I just kept being good to them, maybe one day. And so they are seeing it as being moody. And my mother actually was asking me this morning if I wish that I had been born in a different family. And my mother's annoying. My mother's annoying. Honestly, that's just, I've never had the guts to say that because I always felt guilty even feeling that, but she can be annoying because this is how she plants ideas and thoughts in your head so that she can make you the guilty party, so that she can make you look bad. So essentially, by her asking this question, she wants me to feel like, oh, like, yeah, I'm treating my family like I wish I was actually born in a different family. She's actually putting this on me. It's not just a matter of her asking me and genuinely wanting to know if that's something I wish. No, she's asking this question so that she imposes it on me. And then I start thinking to myself, oh my word, the way that I'm treating my family, it means that I wish I was born in a different family. No, I actually don't wish I was born in a different family. In the midst of the hate and anger that I've had for my family and resentment, I actually never wished that I was born in a different family. And even if I had, that is not a crime. It is not a crime. Because here's another thing that my mother will make you feel like: feeling certain emotions, she'll make it excuse me, she will make it seem like it's a crime. It's not a crime, okay? One person actually once said something so simple but so powerful, that your thoughts are private, okay? So even if maybe I had once thought that, oh, I wish I was born in a different family, it's not a crime. First of all, it's a private thought. And secondly, it's not a crime to even wish that, okay? It might require some reevaluation why you think that or why you wish that, but it's not a crime to wish that, okay? And I told her no, because it was actually true. I've never actually wished I was born in a different family, but I have always wished and hoped that my family was different, that my family was more caring, more understanding, more loving. So, no, mom, I don't wish I was born in a different family. I just wish you were different. I just wish you were more affectionate. I just wish you were more there for me. I wish you would listen more instead of feeling like anything I say to you is an attack. I wish you actually took the time to understand me, to put yourself in my shoes. I wish not everything I said to you was a personal attack. I wish you were just able to love me.